So the story of Boethius is very similar in my mind to the book of Job. You have a young man who was born to a family, pretty wealthy family. The mom and dad's deceased, and then he moves in with another family, which affords him the opportunity to get a good education, which allows him to move up in the ranks amongst the king and the people that he was around, the people he was with. He gains position, power, authority. Eventually, his children gain that same thing, and so you see this person who has wealth and fame and fortune and all these things, all of a sudden it gets stripped away from him, and he's falsely accused, thrown into prison. And while he's in prison, he is awaiting the forfeiture of his life. And then all of a sudden, he's upset about it. And who can blame him? You sit there and you lose everything. You've been on top of the mountain, and now everything's been stripped away from you. It's no more fame, no more fortune, no more nothing, and you're waiting death. Because you've been falsely accused, and so he's angry. He's angry with him with the whole matter of it all. And so while he's there, this personification of philosophy comes to him and tries to help soothe his soul. And it's more the idea of, hey, you shouldn't be angry because of what you know, the truth that you know behind your life. And so he goes on. It's a conversation back and forth. You see this conversation about Fortuna and the fortune wheel, and the fact that, good times happen, and then all of a sudden you're at the bottom and things change, and it's not the fault of fortune because you had nothing to do with the good things, and so therefore the bad things happen. And it's kind of goes back to the scripture, hey, it rains on the just and it rains on the unjust. And so we know that to be true because of the nature of sin. That's the punishment of the world we live in. It's a very stab in the face to prosperity gospel, which I won't get into, but it is true. Even if we do live a good life and we try to do the things that are right and all these things, we can find ourselves in a very similar situation and find ourselves at the bottom of the barrel, struggling, trying to figure out what the real answers are. And so I think the story here does a really good job. The book, The Consolation of Philosophy, does a good job of teaching a way for us to look at life even when we're going through storms. So as we ebb and flow, we go through good times, go through bad times, go through good times, go through bad times. I think it teaches us to look at what we truly own. God allows us to be stewards of a lot of things. Sometimes it's stewards of money, stewards of possessions, and at the very same time, sometimes God calls those things back, and we run out of money. Our possessions get low. We get into a situation where our reputation is compromised. And so you see all that in this story. And Boethius is trying to get it right in his heart. And philosophy here represented is trying to get it right in his head that, hey, go back to what you truly know. What is truth? The thing that you can truly own. They can take away your fame, your fortune, all these other things, but they can't take away what you know, what the truth is. And that's the greatest part, I think, about our faith. When I look at this story and I read it, I don't necessarily see a Christian story, Christian background, but I can relate to some of the things that they're talking about because I know that through truth, no matter what happens on this side, the worst thing that can possibly happen as a Christian is that someone takes my life. And if they take my life, then heaven's the gain. Paul says to live is to Christ and to die is gain. What an awesome statement. And I think this philosophy, this idea of philosophy, is actually teaching him to understand that same concept, that the prosperity that you had, the glory that you had, and all these things, they're working out to a certain good. But there is no good in that if God is not at the basis of it. If God is not at the, because at the beginning of the chapter there, the first book, he actually says that God is in control of it all. He's the one who has put it all in order. And so I kind of question the idea for the Fortuna thing because he just said, well, God's in control of it all. And so I know to be true that God allows, just like the story of Job, he allowed Satan to go in and do these things. And I know that God allows us to go through trials, which makes us, through the fire, purifies us, makes us gold. It makes us precious because as we learn, we grow, and there's something that death itself can't take away, and it's our knowledge of what we know. And the more we know, the happier we can be on the inside. The more I read a scripture, the more I know what's coming after this life, the happier I can be no matter what situation I'm in. Whether I lose my job, something happens to my family, wherever situation you're in, I can, because of knowledge, because of the truth, truth, I can truly be happy. So I want to say this. I don't know necessarily believe that he quite had a grasp on his Christian faith the way that some people may think that he did. And I don't know that, but just based off what I'm reading, because if I was reading this story and I was talking to philosophy, it's good to have knowledge, but stupid knowledge doesn't mean anything. But the knowledge of the gospel of Jesus Christ and the fact that the resurrection from death to life, man, that's a truth that can bring true happiness and true good. That is the true good of mankind. And the more we know and the more we're able to teach and to share, the better off we are to be able to reach somebody. Two questions here. One of the things I want to ask, and this is very compared to the prosperity gospel. Many denominations today believe, like the Old Testament, that if I do good things and I have all these good things happening, that God is going to prosper me. And we know that it was a promise to the Jews, but not necessarily a promise to the church, as we see nearly all the disciples get killed and all those things. So when it comes to this particular idea of prosperity gospel, how does that pale in comparison to his idea of fortune? And so I'd like to see what you think about that when you compare the prosperity gospel to the idea of whether the fortune wheel is just the way it is. Things are just happening and we're just part of it no matter what good we do or what bad. The other question I would ask is, do you see a Christian connection in this particular study?